All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're about ready to get started here. We got a large crowd for this one and a lot of folks still trickling in, it looks like. So the way we're gonna run this, we're gonna run through the webinar, and then we're gonna field questions at the end, I think, because I'm anticipating kind of a large volume of that. So hold your questions, but you can send them in through chat, and we'll be watching those as we get to the end of it. So welcome to the webinar today, Exploring Sitecore 9.1. My name is John Hours. I'm going to take you through this with my colleague, Scott Gillis. Before we begin, just give you a quick background. Those of you who aren't familiar with Paragon, I know this went out through a number of different channels. We're a Sitecore partner located in Cleveland, Ohio. We've been around about 25 years now, a little more. Our roots are in application development, so we're a Microsoft.NET shop. Originally, we came to Sitecore about a decade ago, 2008. We do a lot of work in and around the ecosystem. If you haven't seen us, take a look for us. We're always at the industry events and in and around Symposium and various other Sitecore things as well. We come to the party, of course, with our whole requisite set of awards and things that we've earned over the years, both locally and inside of the Sitecore and the web community. And we're located mostly on the East Coast, although I've got a few stragglers out in the Denver, Colorado area. Headquarters, again, Cleveland, Ohio. All of our people are onshore, and all of our devs are Sitecore certified. So with that said, today's presentation, like I said, my name is John Hours. I'm the CEO at Paragon. I've been here for almost 20 years now. I was involved in and led our move to Sitecore starting back in 2006. When we found our very first client, insurance.com, working on looking at the platform. With me is one of my colleagues, Scott Gillis. He's a lead consultant for us. He's been here. He's been with us for almost a decade and doing Sitecore really the entire time. Scott's a Sitecore MVP for his third year running now. Congratulations, Scott. And you all, anybody who's been to Symposium the last few years may have seen Scott and I together doing presentations on various topics. Most recently, I think Google AdWords and Google Analytics were our last couple. As far as today's presentation goes, I think it was explained pretty well in the email, but we're going to go through some various aspects of Sitecore 9, right? Really let you take a look at, and we did a survey before the webinar and got a lot of interesting feedback from you guys. So we've tried to tune into some of the things we learned. So I think for a number of you, you're at a decision point where you're asking the question, is it time to upgrade, right? I'm on Sitecore 8.2 for a lot of you, Sitecore 7.5 for a number of you. Maybe I just did an upgrade in the last year or two. Is it time for me to make a move? If I do, what should I expect from that process? Like, what are the things I've got to be thinking about as I go forward and embark on an upgrade project? The upgrades in Sitecore, in the later versions of Sitecore, are somewhat different than the earlier versions of Sitecore, so some of that thinking may be a little different than it used to be in the past. The one I think most of you are waiting for is that part 3 there, why Sitecore 9? Like, what does this thing bring to the party? What's in the box here? What do we get to see? And Scott's going to lead us through an in-depth dive into some of those features. And then part 4, we're going to talk about the cloud a little bit. There's topology changes with Sitecore 9, and maybe a good time to think about how and where we put all the pieces to make Sitecore work. And then, like I promised earlier, we're going to end this with a Q&A. So I guess to get us kicked off, Scott, I'll let you begin with, is it time to upgrade?
Thank you, John. So we've all gotten used to using the same applications over and over again, get used to some of those quirks, and we forget to step back and realize some of the things we might be missing in newer versions of the application, just ways to make our process better. So to start us off, I want to take a little trip down memory lane with Sitecore, looking at the past about 10 years of major releases in Sitecore and other technology events we're familiar with. To kind of put some context into why upgrades need to be considered and why now might be the right time for you. So we started in 2007. This is when we first started getting our iPhones in our hands, starting to understand that there's more to marketing to our customers than just a web page or an email or a news flyer. Sitecore came out with Sitecore 6 at this point, being a full feature-rich enterprise CMS. We then move into 2011. We started reading all our books on a Kindle instead of ever going to the bookstore or the library. And we started to get Sitecore, we got Sitecore 6.5. Sitecore 6.5 started to introduce the idea of marketing, marketing automation and marketing tools as part of your enterprise CMS solution. This is also the same year that I got my first taste of Sitecore, became interested. You get 2012, we get Sitecore 6.6, and a continuation of maturing of these marketing ideas as part of a CMS application. We move, kind of jump a couple of years to 2014. We start getting notifications on our wrist via the Apple smartwatch, and Sitecore releases Sitecore 7.5. This brings to the party the experience database and, in concert, the experience profile. So a very specific, unique view of information, of engagement of a single individual we are trying to interact with. This is the major step in Sitecore's evolution in developing and showing the importance of analytics, engaging of the customer, and how that reflects in your content and management of your organization site. This evolution continues with Sitecore 8.2. We see more of the expected behavior out of the experience database, and we start to get the ability to really deep dive into all this data that we've started to collect over the past 2 years via the experience database. Finally, we kind of end up in the past 2 years as our Tesla's Model 3s arrive in our driveways to take us to wherever we'd like. Sitecore 9 came along, and with this brought the Sitecore Experience Accelerator, SXA, some pre-built components to help accelerate getting your site to market and making an impression quicker. And finally, last year, in between Fortnite battles, we received Sitecore 9.1, which we're going to see more about in a little bit. So as Paragon has multiple clients throughout, we kind of can evaluate and break down common versions we see out in the wild, if you would. And your organization sits most likely in one of these 3 categories, running one of these versions of Sitecore Experience Platform. First, we have the Sitecore 7.2. So this is one of the older versions out there. We're missing out on deep analytic insights, along with numerous performance benefits. A lot of people held on to 7.2. It was comfortable, and the introduction of MongoDB for that deep analytic gathering became a little bit of a blocker for them. Important thing to note is Sitecore 7.2 left mainstream support 2 years ago. Is going to be coming up shortly on ending even extended support by Sitecore. The Sitecore 8, probably the smallest of the 3 major versions out in the wild right now. This does give us the deeper insightful analytics, but it also has ended mainstream support at the end of 2018. Which brings us probably the most popular version outside of 6.6, it seems like, which is the 8.2 variations, which a number of you, I'm sure, are running right now. And here we started to realize, as I said, the ability to gather omni-channel analytics. But sadly, this is coming up on end of mainstream support at the end of this calendar year. So what does mainstream support ending look like to you? Well, as versions exit mainstream support, I mean Sitecore's support services that you're currently paying for in licensing fee don't necessarily provide as insightful and helpful information if there's a break, you discover a bug inside the platform. Partners such as Paragon have the knowledge that they might be able to provide a workaround to help you continue moving forward. But it also leads towards the lack of even security updates coming directly from Sitecore. Another thing to keep in mind is these mainstream support endpoints for Sitecore Experience Platform align to a certain degree with the ending of major support for some of the underlying technologies, such as Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft Server, .NET frameworks. So as older versions of Sitecore exit support modes, some of your base infrastructure can begin to lean towards being unsupported, creating a much more unstable arena. So now that we have a feel for some of the reasons why we need to consider the upgrade. John's going to provide us some insight into what you might be able to expect engaging Paragon or another partner in looking at and planning for an upgrade.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. One point I want to make on this previous slide here, especially for those of you, when we did the survey prior to this event, we saw that a number of you are still on 7, in the 7 line, so 7.2, 7.5. Those of you who are still working on Sitecore 7, you're going to see that extended support phase lapse. And the challenge with that, like Scott alluded to, was that security updates and fixes will go away at that point. And when they do, we can't fill those gaps. So the partner ecosystem does a good job of helping work around Sitecore issues, even in the old versions. We saw customers who were being supported in previous versions like that. But we can't fix the security. We can't fix the security issues generally that are found inside of the product, right? And as Scott said, sometimes the underlying technologies also will have security issues. And as those things end support, we can't fix those either. So it's a consideration for those of you guys on 8. It's maybe a looming problem for those of you on Sitecore 7. I'd be happy to talk more about that in the Q&A if anybody has questions on it. But like Scott said, let's move forward into what to expect. And like I said, the upgrade process has changed over the years to some extent. It's still the same basic process. We're going to generally do it offline on the bench and then test and deploy that release, which is a nice change from a number of other products. But we've got a lot of tools at our disposal as we move forward. And we've also got a much better knowledge, much better visibility now into what's changing in each Sitecore release. And sometimes that drives some different thinking inside the organization as you look towards making an upgrade move like this. So first things first, we got to make sure we have licensing solved, right? Hopefully all of you or most of you have your Sitecore maintenance up to date. If you do, we're probably good to continue forward. But there's a number of different changes to the Sitecore licensing models over the years, especially those of you who bought back in the Sitecore 6 and 7 ranges. And the more modern licensing structures can be useful to us as we go to 9. It can be useful to you as you go forward also. We're going to talk about a little bit of that at the end when we talk about the cloud. But also of note here, we talked about topology changing in Sitecore 9. There are often advantages to breaking down, kind of decomposing your environment into some smaller pieces than you might have right now on your Sitecore 6 or 7 or 8 deployment, right? So one of the first things we're going to want to look at with you is really how are you licensed? What did you buy? When did you buy it? Is there a more modern Sitecore alternative that won't necessarily cost you more money, but maybe more flexible for the deployment of 9, right? The second thing we're going to look at, like with any project, we're going to look at the goals of the project that's in front of us, right? And sometimes, a lot of times, the goal is really in the structure of the project we're putting together. A lot of times, a move like an upgrade is an opportunity to accomplish some other things that we've been hoping to do with the site over time, right? And I think this slide outlines some of the thinking around that, right? Are we sure the IA is still appropriate for what we wanted? If we're sitting on Sitecore 7 something version, is there a more modern IA that makes sense, right? Are we looking at a reskin or a refresh anytime near or in the future, right? Are there goals we've been unable to meet with our current site? And are there metrics for the site that we're about to deploy where we can increase our chances of hitting those things? If the answer to some of these things are yes, then we may want to look at doing it at the same time as the upgrade. We can go through, there's a number of advantages to that, but one of them is that we may go through a single testing cycle as opposed to multiple testing cycles. Another is that there will be code likely has to change during the upgrade. And if I can change it once rather than twice, there may be an advantage there as well. We kind of call out on the lower right-hand side of the slide, have a qualified third party involved. And whether that's Paragon or another partner, we've all been through very, very, very many upgrades over our lives in the Sitecore ecosystem. And there's a lot of lessons learned from that and a lot of mistakes we've seen customers make and a lot of really good decisions we've seen customers make. And so a third party who's been here before can help inform that process for you a lot, even if you plan to do it yourself. Other things you're going to see come up, or other things we want to anticipate during an upgrade, one of them is search, especially those of you back on 7, but even those of you on 8. The search landscape has changed somewhat over the Sitecore versions. Lucene falling out of favor, Solar gaining popularity, and Coveo becoming a much more viable option. So one of the things we'll want to look at during an upgrade, especially if you're coming across certain boundaries and versions where the search technology has changed significantly, we're going to look at, is the search platform we're using currently make sense for what we're doing? How tightly is it tied to the site? What do we actually do with it, in terms of search implemented features and so forth? And should we consider at this point changing it? Not to scare anybody, but there are scenarios where the rework to Lucene between Sitecore versions is a very, very heavy lift. And if that's the case, before we do it, we want to make sure we're doing it on the right platform. Likewise, and I mentioned it a minute ago, there will likely be code changes. Most Sitecore major versions and a number of the minor versions will deprecate certain pieces of functionality, and as Scott said, in some cases the underlying technologies will deprecate things, and we have to go back and we have to make changes in that code base. This is again a place where a third party, partner like Paragon or someone else who's been here before can really shed a lot of light on exactly the best way to go about doing this. And especially true if you're looking at making larger architectural moves like moving from web forms to MVC, let's say. And then finally, I mentioned it before, like I said, we'll get into it a little bit later. There's probably topology considerations for your current site, especially if you're coming from the older versions again, where we're going to want to decompose the environments down into some slightly smaller pieces, maybe more distributed roles. And when we do that, we want to consider whether there's opportunity or whether there's goals to be achieved by changing where or how we host this thing, where or how we license it, and how we want to put it together. So that'll be the other major discussion point. Not going to go any deeper than that into what to expect. We can get very technical and talk about, those of you on 8.2 are going to see these things, and those of you on 7.5 are going to see these things. That's not really the depth of this particular presentation, but if there's specific questions, I'll be happy to look at them during the QA at the end, or if obviously to circle back after this presentation. So that's all we're going to say about that. The next section is probably where I said most of the gold is buried here. Why Sitecore 9.1? What's in here and why do we want to go down this road? So I'm going to give that back to Scott. Let Scott take us through some of the great features and benefits.
Thank you, John. So we know that an upgrade is something to be looking forward to in the future. And Sitecore 9.1 is laying the foundation, in my opinion, for the future growth and innovation that Sitecore Experience Platform provides to organizations. We're going to see that across three kind of areas that Sitecore has put into 9.1. The first being innovation. Innovation are those unique features that make Sitecore stand out in the marketplace and are the reasons why you looked at and purchased Sitecore in the past. Sitecore continues to put money, research, and development into this area to keep them in the forefront of the market, which then allows you and your organization to be in the forefront. So two of the major pieces I'm sure you've seen in some materials on Twitter, on LinkedIn over the past couple months is JavaScript services, the idea of headless CMS, as well as Sitecore Cortex, machine learning and artificial intelligence inside of Sitecore. We'll then look at time to market. Time to market comes in two parts. The first is how quickly you can get new content up and running from a new site, a small microsite to support a community event. But as well as long-term timeliness to getting your message across to your customers. I mean, even more importantly, your potential customers. And this comes through new third-party partnerships and strategic alliances Sitecore is making to help us all. And finally, we get into a little bit more technical area and just general enhancements. Every major version includes some form of enhancements just to make the system more stable and better across the board. To get into those unique features, the high-flying ideas that really attract us and keep us with Sitecore. This really first begins with this idea of Sitecore Omnia. It's not a new product. It's not a new thing you have to license and buy. Sitecore Omnia is the term, the grouping of a number of new services and even existing services inside Sitecore Experience Platform to support the idea of headless CMS. To provide context, the idea of headless CMS is the usage of modern JavaScript frameworks to present and leverage content. This content could come from anywhere. In our case, we're looking at using Sitecore to house our content, to edit our content, and then these decoupled, separated applications will present and display this content for us. So in this manner, you can build smaller one-off applications quicker, get them in front of people much faster, while still controlling the content that's being used in your normal workflow and creation process. First, we have Sitecore JavaScript Services, or JSS. This is new in Sitecore 9.1. It provides an open source JavaScript SDK. You can go to node.js, download it, start building out a single-page web application with modern JavaScript technologies you're already familiar with no real context of what Sitecore is. Next, you have Sitecore GraphQL. GraphQL is a modern web API querying language, allowing you to call into an endpoint, in this case Sitecore, and request very specific data elements and content. Again, a very popular, very well-known API that Sitecore has taken and is trying to leverage, opening up new avenues to use their content. Next, you have Sitecore Services. This is actually an old traditional web service. It's been around since Sitecore 7.0 and provides a traditional web interface to move content in and out of Sitecore. It's actually heavily used in the Experience platform itself, populating and controlling screens you regularly use and see. Next, we have Sitecore Experience Accelerator. So beyond just helping you build pages faster and smarter, it also contains some API-level modeling for JSON data and a layout service API. Layout service is unique in the terms that it'll take a page you built, including presentation rules, personalization rules, and when that page is requested through the layout services, it'll trigger all those personalization rules, populates the JSON message that then goes to that modern JavaScript application sitting separate from Sitecore. So you do not lose any of that power that Sitecore provides us in targeting our content, manipulating it to the message the customer wants to hear. Finally, we have Universal Tracker. This is a new service in Sitecore 9.1. We'll discuss it in a couple of slides. But this doesn't push content. This is capturing content, capturing interactions from any device in any state, and moving that into Sitecore Experience database for us to analyze, leverage, and make better decisions.
Scott, if I may, this concept of Sitecore Omni is really a transformational one, and I think it's one that we haven't seen communicated very well through the ecosystem, really through the whole industry. And this concept of being able to build with a CMS in a headless mode, feeding the various other aspects of the front office, and even gathering data out of the other aspects of the front office. This is maybe a more meaningful slide or maybe a more meaningful topic for the technically inclined on this call right now. So I'll have to ask the marketing folks to trust me that you will see this type of architecture start to invade the platforms you work with. The more sites you deal with, the more different platforms you deal with. And the fact that Sitecore supports this right now is very, very exciting.
And to that point, from a marketer standpoint, if you just own the content, aren't worried about the technology, this idea of the headless is a unique opportunity to leverage just a design creative agency to quickly get up running fresh content out there without them having to have any real knowledge about Sitecore and your site as it currently is built. Sitecore JavaScript Services, as I mentioned, it's an open source SDK. Anybody can go download it. If you're familiar with JavaScript, start building a website, single page web application, even a mobile application using JavaScript. Eventually then you can deploy it. It can be deployed in two fashions. The first is deployed as any other single page web application, one-off website would be. Connect the API token and endpoint that talks to Sitecore, and you have a site up and running without any real context what Sitecore is and means. The other unique innovation that JSS provides, the ability to build that modern JavaScript application, import it into Sitecore, so Sitecore host serves it up, and then because the application is within the context of Sitecore Experience platform, you can then use the Experience editor to edit the content, provide personalization rules, and other marketing automation features inside of Sitecore. Now, when the application is served up, you get all the rich features Sitecore Experience platform provides the traditional website sense inside this new modern JavaScript application website. This is a unique standpoint that most other of these headless CMSs don't really provide. They separate the two significantly, your content, your marketing, and then the actual serving up of the content. I mentioned the Universal Tracker. Universal Tracker is the idea that we can have customers touching and engaging with us in multiple avenues, mobile applications, virtual assistants. some sort of IoT device, lights on, lights off, garage open, or even a traditional website, or one of these modern JavaScript framework-styled websites. That's a lot of interactions that we would like to see and understand. The Universal Tracker is a modern web API technology service that allows all this data to be fed into. It's built on top of .NET Core, meaning it scales well, it performs very well, and it provides us unique opportunities for deployment scenarios, allowing us the best opportunities to capture engagement from our customers. And finally, the Universal Tracker, as it absorbs all this information, does some processing, and then pushes the information to the Sitecore Experience database, where it's truly helpful in us making decisions about our customers and their journey to conversion. So in the 21st century insights, we have a lot of data the Sitecore Experience platform provides us. And what do we do with all this? We start to use machine learning, artificial intelligence through the power of Sitecore Cortex. So Sitecore Cortex is a way for us to see the trailing journey that is anything but linear, bounces between search and websites, mobile applications, word of mouth, to eventually become a conversion. This conversion, traditionally we've seen that journey broken up. Each step has its own silo of information. From search is all maybe inside of Google Analytics, or email is all inside of Salesforce Marketing Cloud. But through the power of the Universal Tracker, we can centralize all that information in the Sitecore Experience platform, and then place Cortex on top of it to analyze and then provide us insights we may not have seen otherwise. This comes in the fashion of predictive analysis. So as users come to the site, they came from an email, Cortex, based on historical data we've already seen, knows they're going to go straight to the mobile app. We can prompt that user to get there faster and then hopefully convert sooner. The other feature that comes with Cortex is it provides, through Thomas Reuters' Open Gillis project, the ability to examine all content, provide tagging and taxonomy to help inform our SEO and our general content strategy. Next, we have time to market. So the timeliness to get information out in front of the customer, as well as timeliness in just making business decisions. The first of these big enhancements in Sitecore 9.1 is the strategic partnership Sitecore has formed in working with Salesforce. This has really come to fruition with Sitecore 9.1 with the release of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud module. This was built by Sitecore and Salesforce, not a third-party partner, but by Sitecore themselves, to help companies and organizations start to unify their data. So we see bidirectional information that we've gained in Sitecore Experience platform, pushing it to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, as well as Salesforce's data being pushed back into Sitecore. So this then allows us to make better decisions, allowing Cortex to make more informed analysis of how to angle our customer's journey. In addition, part of this new module allows us to share content. So content we've built inside of Sitecore can be pushed to the Journey Builder or the Email Studio inside of Salesforce Marketing Cloud, allowing us to centralize our information and gaining a little bit the best of both worlds, Sitecore's premier CMS, along with Salesforce's marketing.
And if I may, Scott, the Salesforce-Sitecore relationship is relatively new and moving very, very quickly. Those of you who have both platforms in-house have probably seen this already. We were actually on a partner webinar this morning that outlined some more of the roadmap for this that we're not going to share on this webinar. But suffice to say that this is moving and evolving very quickly, and there's a lot of very interesting benefits for Salesforce users, in particular for Salesforce Marketing Cloud users who are also Sitecore users. You'll notice that you're seeing Sitecore show up at more Salesforce events. You're seeing you're seeing Sitecore show up at Salesforce show up at Sitecore events, Sitecore show up at Salesforce events. This is a tie that is growing and growing tighter, and we expect to see this continue. So those of you who have Salesforce in-house, this may by itself be reason enough to start looking at Sitecore 9.
Thank you, John. Sitecore Experience Accelerator was announced in 2016, released in 2017 in a preview form. It was really a tool set Sitecore saw a gap to provide us a new way to build pages more quickly, more efficiently, through a drag and drop interface, built on top of best practices, both on the front end using mobile first modern CSS frameworks, as well as on the technology side using Sitecore Helix practices. And it's a way to really separate information architecture from the creative side. You can start entering content, and then in parallel, still decide on the color scheme and the theming of the site in general. So with that, in Sitecore 9.1, SXA has gone through some significant enhancements. The first being the beginning of a multi-phase approach to turn all of these out-of-the-box components that are provided to be accessibility compliant. They meet WCAG compliancy. And this is a big win because that can always be a little bit of a headache, especially on complicated navigation, accordion, and other type of components. You also, as part of SXA, is the ability to, again, start entering content and then be able to build out the design and some of the HTML separately. And in past versions, this was difficult to solve because you had to overwrite specific default files. And now in 9.1, we have the ability to easily just submit those files without ever touching default files, allowing for easier and more seamless upgrades.
Those of you who are coming from older versions of Sitecore, SXA is perhaps the biggest shift that you're going to see in the newer lines. I know that a number of you on the pre-webinar survey said that you were not familiar with SXA yet. And so I can't encourage you enough to get out, take a look at what's been published, talk to your build partner, and find out a little bit more about this. You know, in the old days where you opened the box with Sitecore, you had nothing but a Sitecore splash web page. You know, you couldn't do anything short of looking at it until you had somebody technical involved. With SXA, you actually can, from a marketing standpoint, open up a browser and build out a site to support a campaign, to build out a site to support a department, build out a site to support an entire line of business, just based on the SXA components that are there. That's a major paradigm shift. So if you're on 7 or 8 right now and you're not familiar with SXA, you know, please do take a look at it. This is something that can really advance you forward.
Next, we're going to get to the idea of enhancements. So just general improvements in the Sitecore Experience platform. The first of these is there's been significant performance improvements to the content editor and experience editor. We're talking in the realm of multiple seconds, tens of seconds, which we can all agree would definitely make the day go smoother and much nicer. Next, really from a very technical perspective, is this new service framework called Sitecore Host. This is a big paradigm shift for Sitecore that really lays the foundation to what we're going to see in the next versions, in the future versions of Sitecore. Sitecore Host is the idea of taking base functionality such as logging, pipelines, configuration, combining them in a single package built on top of .NET Core, and then allows us as users of the site, developers of the site, to create custom applications that run right on top. These custom applications could be new interfaces, new ways to interact with your data to make your organization better, more smoothly, as well as custom applications to support your customers. Now, this isn't just a one-off thing. Sitecore is currently using this in 9.1. They built the universal tracker, which we talked about, on top of Sitecore Host. The Sitecore Identity Service is built on top of Sitecore Host. The up-and-coming Horizon UI, the new editing interface, is also built on top of the Sitecore Host. It's a very exciting move that we'll see a lot with Sitecore moving forward. Next, in Sitecore 9.1, one of the other major enhancements most we consider is the sunsetting of web forms for marketers, so that content managed form building is not available, but we now have that replaced with what they call Sitecore Forms, allowing us a better, cleaner, more friendly editing interface. It also provides us some of the missing functionalities we've always looked for, The first being conditional fields. One of the big requests I get with every client is, how do I hide the phone number field if they enter an address? And that was always a problem in web forms for marketers. In Sitecore Forms, you can now do that with a simple rules engine style dialog box. And what that then leads us to, that Sitecore Forms provides, is this idea of branching or progressive forms. You answer one question, and then it moves you through the form, giving a smoother interaction and collection of data. So with those new ideas floating around, John's going to take us into the cloud a little bit.
Sure. So the question that comes up now, with all we know about Sitecore and about the ways that this is changing, and what I mentioned about the topology changes prior, is this time to go to the cloud, right? Some of you may have experimented with this in previous versions or your current version with little success, right? The cloud components you had, the ability to put Sitecore in a PaaS arrangement in particular at Azure, was rocky in previous versions, especially 8.2 and earlier, right? As of 8.2.1, the Azure support was rewritten in Sitecore, and it's retired most of these non-standard deployment mechanisms that were in place. For the marketers on this call, what you need to know is this works better. For the technical people, what you need to know is it's no longer launched out of the Sitecore content tree the way it used to be, right? It's now a much more standard deployment mechanism. The old Azure modules go away in favor of the Azure Toolkit. There's regular ARM templates, and we can do finally a standard sane Azure PaaS deployment, right? Supporting that, the Mongo dependency is removed. So in Sitecore 9.1, I don't know that we said it explicitly, but we can run all of our profile data now and our clickstream data and everything else into SQL as opposed to Mongo. This has a whole bunch of wins for us, especially for those of you who are multinational that have servers in different geographies, and those of you who've been trying to run in the cloud, where Mongo complicates that extensively. In support of all that, there are now multiple proven deployments. So trying to go to the cloud now in Sitecore 9.1, you're no longer an early adopter, right? Paragon has multiple customers successfully running in the cloud, both in platform as a service arrangements and infrastructure as a service arrangements. Other partners will have the same type of portfolio. And so you're not going to be on the bleeding edge here trying to figure out, why doesn't this thing work and how do I put it together? Of note, I guess a footnote there is not all partners do a lot of cloud work. So make sure as you look to move to the cloud, you have support of somebody who has done this before, because it's not trivial the first time through, and you don't want to have to climb the learning curve of both the product and the platform. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. The other thing that is an important driver right now towards the cloud is that the subscription licensing program at Sitecore has evolved, and it has even evolved since that Sitecore 8.2 days. It continues to evolve. There are a number of things that play in our favor in taking a Sitecore deployment to the cloud now. In particular, there's restrictions on non-production environments, or used to be restrictions on non-prod environments that have been removed. So we can now mirror the production environment in our non-prod environment, and that gives us the ability to do some more sophisticated automation, as well as we do code promotions, things like blue-green deployments that we can do by matching the environments and so on. They've also standardized the consumption metrics. We no longer have to deal with things like monthly interactions. We can deal with things like annual sessions, which make much more sense to everybody, and really allow us to take advantage of the ups and downs we may have, let's say, in a seasonal business that's going to get busy around Christmas time and is going to slack during the summer. So again, if we're looking to go to the cloud, we have better support. We can make a better case for it now, given the way that Sitecore is willing to license it. Other things that were sticking points to the cloud in the past was feature parity. Even those of you back on 8.2, certainly anybody who tried this in Sitecore 7.5 would find that a number of features just simply didn't work when you went to the cloud, especially in a PaaS arrangement, or you had massive integration challenges in doing it. Sitecore 9 and 9.1 bring feature parity to the cloud, so everything, including X marketing, actually work. We can support complex deployments now. So talked about it a minute ago, multiple environments, multiple locations, even those of you in China or deeper into Asia Pac, we can support all those types of topologies as we go to the cloud with Sitecore now. App service is fully supported, so we do run as a regular PaaS platform when we deploy this. Azure Search is supported. We talked earlier about how we have different search considerations as we upgrade. This is yet another one. And of course, probably the biggest pain point we had in the old days trying to move Sitecore to the cloud, to Azure, was that Azure Active Directory wasn't supported properly, right? So we couldn't always get authentication to work in the cloud. That's supported as well now. So what are your options for going to the cloud with Sitecore? There are multiple options for putting Sitecore on Azure. Azure still remains the first choice platform for Sitecore, and Sitecore is a first class citizen on the Azure platform. We can support both platform as a service and infrastructure as a service deployments on Azure. For those of you who are less technical on the call, infrastructure as a service basically means you and your organization have to manage a server or many servers. Platform as a service means you and your organization manage only the application, and Microsoft manages the servers themselves that underlie it. So you have the option of moving straight to Azure in a cloud that's already been established, possibly by your IT group, or maybe one that's being done fresh for marketing. Sitecore now has their own managed cloud product, which is in place and running, operational with some of my customers on it. Sitecore Managed Cloud is backed by Azure, and that's a product where Sitecore will provide the platform for you, help you size it, and deploy your application onto that. And then there's an array of partners that offer managed services. My company, Paragon, is one of them, offer managed services to either help you support your own Azure cloud environment or to help you support the environment that you get with the Sitecore Managed Cloud product. Those give you the most SaaS-like, so software as a service-like experience, to where you can say, hey, I've got this website and just please take care of it for me. As always, Amazon, AWS, Google Cloud, other cloud type platforms are still supported. They still work. I still have customers running on them. Those are all going to be infrastructure as a service arrangements only, and really are unaffected by by some of the changes in Sitecore 9. So that gives you just a little bit of background, hopefully, on exactly what we're in for with the cloud. If we decide to go that route, it's something you'll definitely want to talk about. Even if you decide to stay with your on-premise deployment, you'll want to know what's available here as you go forward. So I think that's it, Scott, in terms of prepared content, right?
Correct.
And I guess now we can jump into a little bit of Q&A. We have about 15 minutes or so left to field questions. If you guys want to type them into the chat box, we can monitor that, and I guess Scott and I can take them as they come up. Let's see what we got. Okay, Scott, first question, and this one's going to be for you probably. Is Omni buggy?
Is Omnia buggy? Well, again, Sitecore Omnia is a collection of different services. All of them are built specifically Sitecore JavaScript services and Sitecore GraphQL. Those are built on known technologies. Many systems provide GraphQL endpoints, provide REST API, JSON endpoints. So there's nothing new, nothing fancy Sitecore is doing there. They've wrapped it, provided the interface for you to use traditional modern tools. Similar with the Sitecore Experience Accelerator, it's flattened JSON. So again, common modern interface to interact with. So I wouldn't necessarily say they're buggy in that regard.
Let's be real though, everybody on the call here is a Sitecore customer, right? The longer the Sitecore release is out, the less buggy it will become. There are issues in there. We have not run into critical showstopper issues with it. So everything's workable and it continues to solidify, right?
That's right.
So is it significantly buggy or showstopper buggy? No. Are there issues that you'll want to have that you may need somebody to help you take a look at? Most likely.
Yeah, that's true. And to that point, JavaScript services, especially JSS, that went through a multi-year testing with live customers in preview mode. So they have done a lot of work trying to make it as least buggy as possible, if you would.
All right, second question, Scott, and maybe we can both handle this one. What are the risks to not upgrading?
So I think the first major risk of delaying upgrading comes to the idea of support. We lose support both from Sitecore and just bare platform patches and hotfixes. The next would be the underlying technology. So if you're running a significantly old version of Sitecore, one of those 6.x versions, we're going to see some technology some of those technologies are older. They're no longer really supported by the according vendor. Beyond that, just in general, the longer you wait to do an upgrade, the more expensive it becomes. If you're sitting on a 6.6 or 7.2, there's actually a couple stop points you have to hit before you can even get to 9.1. So that's even one of the bigger considerations is the longer you wait, the more costly to make the move is going to be. Have anything to add, John?
Nope, but I got an awful lot of questions, so we'll keep going. Obviously, if there's anything we want to get deeper into, we can get into it as we can get into it after the webinar. Question here, is there any integration with Salesforce's Pardot product? I've seen that Sitecore 9 integrates with Salesforce Marketing Cloud.
The Pardot product, I'm a little weak on the Salesforce side of things. If my memory serves me, the Pardot is one of the vendors Salesforce has acquired in the recent years around the email communication, or is that the
ExactTarget's email? Pardot.
Okay. It's the marketing automation.
Is automation, yeah.
So there is some integration right now, currently on that piece, with a little bit of content sharing. There is a roadmap that's forthcoming that they're making huge strides as one of their goals, allowing Pardot to be heavily leveraged for content sharing in both directions, Sitecore content going in and even triggering, and Salesforce triggering and pushing data into Sitecore. So again, that it shows Sitecore is showing they're strategically aligned with Salesforce, making a major focus research development on a very rapid release cycle. The Sitecore Marketing Cloud module came out last summer, and it's already had essentially three releases already of just additional features unifying the two platforms.
So another question, I'll take this one. Any plan for SaaS on Azure? Sitecore, I do not believe has any plan for.
I'm going to interrupt. They've started with Sitecore Kickstarter.
Yep.
It's just announced, which is SaaS on Azure. So this is a.
Scott's going to take it.
Yeah.
Go, Scott.
Brand new. This is a brand new press release as of Tuesday morning. Actually, is this idea of Sitecore Kickstarter. It's a limited form of using Sitecore, but it's pure SaaS. You rent the license, you rent the location, you push your content. It's in a slow mode. They're slowly introducing it. Right now, it's only in the United States regions. But it gives you that pure WordPress-like SaaS environment. But there's definitely significant limitations to that pure SaaS currently in Sitecore versus the SaaS-like John spoke about in the cloud, where a partner such as Paragon helps support everything, provides you 24/7 support to make sure everything keeps running, but you really have control over your content, how it looks, and even the analytics associated.
Got it. Yeah, a good point, Scott. For those of you who are looking at new sites or Kickstarter or campaign sites and so forth, that may be an appropriate option. Kickstarter may be an appropriate option.
Right.
Those of you with fully built sites who are looking for more of a SaaS type experience, I encourage you to look at Paragon or another partner or who can help provide that either in your own cloud or around the Sitecore Managed Cloud offering. I am cherry picking questions a little bit out of the list here. We'll try to get back to everybody afterwards if we didn't get them. A number of these are on level of effort in terms of Sitecore upgrade. I'm going to decline to answer those because a lot of that's going to depend on your actual site and your actual ambitions with the upgraded site. Scott, one question here. As they fixed the experience editor, it was slow in 8.1. I think you mentioned something to that point earlier.
Yes. Yeah, they've made major improvements to performance. The slide I recall seeing at Symposium last October, we're talking, again, 5 to 10 seconds in many scenarios of performance increases. So just, again, general enhancements to the core platform, cleaning up old code that's no longer really needed, is really seeing a benefit to our editors.
Scott, any updates to EXM in 9?
Some performance upgrades, no real new feature sets in EXM at this point in time. There's some major feature updates to the product in 9.0, and those just kind of continued into 9.1.
Got it. A couple of questions here asking around Cortex. I'll try to merge them all together. How much data does Cortex need to be effective? Can you talk a little bit more about Cortex? What are the Cortex use cases? I think it's fair to say that Cortex is still sort of in its infancy. It's the machine learning piece that's coming together. You can see some artifacts of it and some places where it's actually interacting with you in Sitecore 9.1. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what those are, how they do, which parts work, which parts don't?
So we'll start with the data idea. So you do have to train the machine. It has to be trained on sets of data. So you could train it on a small set of data, maybe 1,000 interactions, but you're not going to necessarily get as good of predictions out of the system. So there is a little bit of a barrier, especially initially in getting Cortex to provide high-level predictive analysis, unless you do have significant tens, hundreds of thousands of interactions in your XDB. Part of so that's kind of where it does become a little tricky, but Sitecore Cortex is efficient right out of the box without any machine training, algorithm training, in helping you analyze your content using Open Gillis, providing you a taxonomy and understanding of what content you have where. Even to that point, using Sitecore Cortex, it does work very well, even on smaller data sets, and then analyzing any ABC type testing you've got running on the site, making sure those outcomes happen as they should.
Here's a really interesting one, Scott. Is Universal Tracker replacing FXM, or is FXM still a part of Sitecore 9.1?
My understanding is FXM is continuing, at least for the short-term future. So Universal Tracker really just pulls data, collects. FXM collects data, but also has the ability to push content to wherever that FXM beacon is. And that type of push scenario doesn't exist with Universal Tracker. So again, Universal Tracker in my mind is almost like Google Analytics. It just pulls data, just send data to it, and that's all it is.
I'll give you a scenario question, Scott. We are currently on 7.2 in the process of upgrading to 9.1. How important is it to have SXA out the gate? Are the benefits worth having access to on day one, or can we add this in later? I would recommend to install it right out of the gate. You're already monkeying with servers, configurations. You might as well take the extra 2 hours and get it installed. You don't necessarily have to use it out of the gate. SXA is built to be ran side by side. It's traditionally built sites. One of the things I didn't mention is you can even link content now in 9.1 between a traditional Sitecore built site and an SXA site. So there is a methodology there to upgrade, install SXA, and then slowly start migrating your site, maybe as you rebrand it, into SXA. Really interesting question here. Do you agree with the published Azure topology for 9.1 from Sitecore's knowledge base? I would say that we mostly agree with it. The environments we put in for customers have some changes to sizing and some changes to topology for convenience, depending on exactly what the customer is aiming for. I would say it tends more towards an ideal state than a practical state. Certainly happy to get into that more deeply with whoever asked that question after this call. Scott, there's multiple questions here on Dynamics CRM. We talked a bunch about Salesforce. Questions like, is it supported? Are there plans to support it more fully? You want to talk a little bit about what's in there still for Dynamics integration?
The existing connectors continue to work. I've not seen like any major announcements of new features in that connection. But again, Microsoft Dynamics is still known to be popular. It's still supported by a Sitecore built connector module. Just since CRM doesn't contain some of the richer marketing features of Salesforce, it's just not getting as much play right now.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think candidly, there are some strategic go-to-market options between Salesforce and Sitecore that are driving this type of alignment. I think the dynamic stuff remains as it is. I would expect to see it still supported, but not evolving nearly at the pace that we're seeing the the Salesforce evolution. All right, that said, I think that's all we have time for on this webinar today. There are questions in here we didn't get to. I apologize if we didn't get to yours. By all means, follow up with Lori afterwards. We'll try to get answers to everything that's in here. A number of these were, how much work is it? How much time does it take? Do I have to upgrade my search platform? Is solar required? How does this work? And certainly any of the logistics of upgrades, be happy to address those offline. Really appreciate everybody for joining us today. I think in total this ended up being our largest attended webinar. So congratulations, Scott. Congratulations, Lori, on that. Thank you guys for joining us, spending a little bit of time after lunch. Hopefully you got some good information there and have a good idea what's coming in Sitecore 9. Anything else you want to say, Scott?
Not at the moment. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
That's great. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you again.